Hey there. One of the things that is often not talked about being a startup founder is the fact that as a startup CEO, your main role is that of a customer service representative. Your job is to make sure that your customers are happy, both big and small. Your job is to make sure that your customers are loyal to you. And it is your job, most importantly, to make sure that your customers get the most value out of working with you. And it's for some people that aspect of it comes naturally, and for some people it requires a lot of work. Now, being a good salesperson is different from being a good customer service representative. Selling your services to someone requires a completely different skill set, a completely different way of talking, as opposed to working with and retaining customers. As you can imagine, early on in the life of the startup, everything was done by one or two people. In this case, it was me. I was the one selling my services. I was the one talking to them week in and week out. I was the one convincing them of the things that we are doing, and I was the one presenting the results of the work that we did with them, while at the same time ensuring that we get more customers, while at the same time making sure your employees are trained, while at the same time making sure you yourself are developing the skill sets required. So here are a few aspects of the importance of customer retention and customer loyalty as a startup tech founder. The first one is the fact that your customers are loyal to you is perhaps one of the biggest indicators of how well or how not well your startup is doing. At the end of the day, what I believe that customers really care about is not the fact that what technology you use on the back end. They couldn't care what automations are taking place. They couldn't care how much you pay your employees. What they do care about is the value that they receive. And if the value that they receive is proportional to the money that they're spending on you, it's proportional to the time that they're spending on you, then it makes sense. The real challenge comes is that as a startup, you typically work with early stage companies, and as both the companies keep growing, obviously the dynamics keep growing, the value impact keeps changing, and hence it's not necessarily that if something worked a few years back it may continue to work going ahead. So I think it's important to evolve with time, as the life cycle of your business and the life cycle of your customers keep evolving with time. The second is the product service alignment. Like I mentioned, so a majority of the early customers who we worked with are still our customers. Some of them have evolved, some of them have taken a lot of services in house, some of them have sold to other larger companies. And so a lot of things might have happened, but the important fact is that what we focus on, or at least I focus on from my end, is to make sure that we continue delivering value to our customers. If I feel that when I speak to a potential customer that we cannot provide them the value that we provide our other customers, I have reached a position where I've started saying no to potential customers, because I feel that even if we start working together, even if we work for a few months, there may not be a long-term connection. So Xena software has very specific actions that it does, and we have realized over time that there are few companies or few type of customers who it has most impact on versus other type of customers, even though they may request us to work with them. And that's the part where revenue generation comes in. So in the early stage of startup, you are very grateful for whatever little money you get and whatever arrangement you have with your customers. But the moment you start getting revenue, everything changes, because once the money starts coming in, you position, or you think about your expenses, you think about the future of the company. And plus, with investors, if you're a startup, you will need to explain the logic behind the pricing, the logic behind the expenses, the logic behind the profitability, and so on. And hence the whole equation kind of starts changing. And as you grow, as you get more customers, you would imagine your pricing also evolves with time. You would have more automations in place. You will try to reduce the manpower expenditure that you have to incur. And you want to make sure that the value that the customers get is as high as possible. And that comes to my fourth part, which is receiving valuable insight for your customers. You can imagine a lot of things what your customers may or may not want, but the best way is that as you work with more customers, more different type of customers, you kind of start realizing what is truly important for them. Some customers like spending a lot of time with you. Some customers like the fact that they want to spend the least amount of time talking to you and just let the things run on the back end. And so you have to realize what kind of customers work best with you and kind of move ahead with that. Our customers are also the best source of information regarding your pricing, the way you service, and every touch point that you have. You will get really valuable insights on the right type of customers that you work with. And finally, brand advocacy. A lot of the customers that we used to get and still do is due to referrals from existing customers. They like us so much that they essentially become a brand advocates. You can imagine, even in your situation, when you use other tools, platforms, or services, if you really like them, you would not hesitate in sharing that with other people in your network who may need those services. And we have been very fortunate to have been on the receiving end of that. And focusing on product led growth as a tech company, we have realized that the services aspect of it may not be too disconnected from the tech aspect of it, because at the end of the day, I've realized that we are humans. The software can do as good a job as possible, but there are certain situations where a human touch could be helpful as well. Just another insight that I've received. So these are the different aspects of customers loyalty, brand advocacy, and customer retention that I've realized along the way. I have a lot to learn, but this experience so far, having worked with over 60 customers at this point, has been quite enlightening, and it gives you a unique insight into how the human mind works, and how the outside world thinks of you and your organization.